Hello, what's up everybody, welcome to a brand new Division 2 video. My name is Duskhound and today I'm going to give you my summary of the Division 2 beta. So by now the beta has come and gone, and I personally sunk in a whopping 32 hours and 22 minutes into this game, of which 6.5 hours was at the end game level. So it is fair to say that I have played plenty of this game and can fairly summarize the experience. However, if this was not clear enough already, this is specifically for the beta. The full game is not out until March 15th for standard editions, or for gold and above March 12th. And of course, I will probably make a follow-up video to compare how the game has improved from the beta, and maybe even a review on the game as its whole. However, with all that out of the way, let's get into it, starting off with the general things about the gameplay. Let's start off with the setting of the game. The game takes place in Washington DC, 7 months after the events of the first game and the outbreak of the green poison. In those 7 months, nature has started to reclaim DC, providing with a very bright and green, lush environment. A vastly contrasting experience to the snowy streets and dark underground tunnels of New York City. However, this is not necessarily a bad thing. I personally think the new environment is nice and refreshing. As I've already said, it vastly contrasts with the original setting, providing you with a totally different feeling when exploring the ruined streets, all while still giving you that feeling of abandonment and survival above all. Unfortunately, with this setting comes a slight issue. The sun, in my opinion, is just way too bright in some situations, providing you with a very washed out look on your screen, or reducing your ability to see to near enough nothing. And on the opposite side of the spectrum, some of the dark places are so dark you can't even see the tiny obstacles that are stopping you from moving forward, providing a very frustrating experience. However, there is some situations where the game just really excels at showing off how beautiful this environment can be. And with the addition of a new photo mode, you can truly capture that beautiful screenshots with ease. Moving on to the gunplay, I feel that the gunplay has vastly improved from the Division 1. However, it still feels very familiar, which is great in my opinion. And along with the overall improvements to the gun handling and how it feels to shoot a weapon, that experience is enhanced even more by improved gun sounds, which provides you a great sound feedback when you pull that trigger. However, that brings me on to my number one issue about this beta. During the beta, more providently during the later days of the beta, existed an issue that really got on my nerves. And that was an issue that could only be fixed by restarting your game fully. What would happen is, randomly, your guy would act like he is shell-shocked and lose the ability to hear most things, and even in some cases, all audio would just cut out. This is something that annoyed me, but since it is a beta, I am willing to not let myself get too overly annoyed about it. However, if it still persists in the main game and they already have confirmed that they know about this issue, I will then be, let's just say, pissed. And whilst we're on the topic of issues, I'm going to get this one out of the way. During the first couple of days of the beta, I almost guarantee your experience, if you did play, was looking at a screen all too familiar. And that screen is the Delta 03 error, which as far as I know means you lose connection to the server. This was an expected issue. However, it happened between every 10 minutes and 1 hour of gameplay, which really disrupted the flow and took you out of the game and was really frustrating. But as I said, they managed to improve this over the days, and by the end of the beta, it was near enough gone. So if you've seen any videos out there that were made with footage of the first day of the beta and they judged their opinions on the first day of the beta, I would disregard anything they said about the Delta 03 error because it got fixed. However, I'd expect to see a few of them on launch day due to server capacity. Apart from them two pretty big bugs, there was a few other issues. The worst of all the bugs was the issue that caused the game to crash. This would happen if you played an extended period of time, and it would cause your game to go onto a black screen, then all of a sudden load for a second, and then all of a sudden, just like that, it's gone. It would crash completely, bringing you to your desktop or your dashboard depending on what platform you were on. This issue did get improved as the days went on, however it still persisted at the end of the beta, so I hope by the time this comes to launch, this issue is completely fixed, as it would be annoying to crash after playing every 3 or 4 hours. Some smaller issues included some janky animations, AI sometimes bugging out. Most evidently when you're playing as a group and you spread around the enemy, they tend to not know who to prioritize or what to do in some situations. I have also heard of some invisible enemy issues, however I did not run into a single occurrence of this myself, and there was an issue that was very rare where players were able to get their hands on a god damage weapon. However, that one will definitely be on the top of the list of priority bugs to fix, as it is a completely game-breaking bug if let into the final release of the game. And with that, that's all the bad bugs of the beta out of the way. So let's move on. Moving on from the general things of this game brings us onto a topic of one of my favorite things about The Division, that being the loot. Along with the previous archetypes of SMGs, ARs, pistols, shotguns, SMGs and snipers, comes a brand new archetype of weapon, that being the rifle, which provides you something between a sniper rifle and an AR. If you were a fan of the urban MDR in The Division 1, think a bunch of weapons that work in similar ways, including the MDR itself. And along with these archetypes, there is no shortage of weapons that come along with them. The Division 2 has a huge selection of weapons on offer. Many are returning weapons from the Division 1, such as the MP7, the FAL, and of course the previously mentioned Urban MDR. However, there is brand new weapons such as the CTAR-21, lever action rifle, and the SR-1 sniper rifle. Of course there is a bunch more, but I cannot think of them all off the top of my head, nor have I had the chance to loot every single one. And of course I could go on ahead and break down each one of these weapons one by one, but however, this video is already long enough. And of course, all this stuff is subject to change, so it's better waiting for the full release to start doing weapon reviews. Moving off of weapons, we also have, of course, our armor. The armor system is in some ways similar to the Division 1, but in other ways completely different. For instance, armor still rolls with attributes, such as crit hit damage, additional armor, health, or weapon damage. However, what has changed from the Division 1 in the Division 2 is that starting with blue rarity items, your armor can now roll with a brand. A brand is like a smaller version of a gear set, providing you small bonuses to things like AR damage, SMG damage, crit hit chance, skill power, and so on. Equipping one piece of this armor will give you the first bonus, 2 will give you the second, and 3 will give you the third. However, something that is little known right now is that there is going to be gear sets. However, the beta purposely did not have access to these, so we will have to wait till the full game to take a look at that. So let's focus on how brand sets were. I think they brought a nice new addition to the loot system of the Division. It allowed you to start thinking about your build really early on, and provides a kind of gateway into forming proper builds for new players. On my main character, I tended to focus on an SMG focused build, and with the 10% bonuses to SMG damage and the small bonuses to crit hit damage and crit hit chance that the brand sets I specifically chose, my SMG was tearing through people. So I'm already starting to imagine that there is a lot of build potential with this system. However, when we got access to end game level characters, a lot more things started to be revealed, such as mod slots. Mod slots are now on absolutely everything. Of course, we have the mod system on our weapons, which has changed a lot. Instead of finding them as random loot, you now craft them or get the perks associated for them. You will also find blueprints for mods as the reward for side missions. And one of the most significant changes is that mods for your weapons now have negative stats, causing you to think very carefully about the kind of mods you want to put on your weapon. Armor mods have also went through a significant change. With so much mods to choose from in so much different categories, it almost becomes overwhelmingly complicated. However, these mods give you up to 4 attributes that can significantly benefit your build. And as for the last thing, and the most surprising thing to me, is that you can now modify your skills. I think this is to compensate from the change from the main stat focused Division 1 to the more set in stone based character of the Division 2. In my experience playing, I was only lucky enough to get 1 skill mod. However, that decreased my cooldown for my Seeker Mine by 270%, giving it less than a 10-second cooldown. And if that sounds insane to you, that's because that is. And you better believe, when people get their hands on this, PvP is going to become an absolute Seeker Mine fest. So my aim is to get my hands on it first. In conclusion, I think the new loot system is vastly superior to the Division 1. However, I am not a fan of the overwhelmingly complex new armor mod system. Instead of having multiple different kinds of armor mods, I believe that you should just put them all into one category. And of course, in doing so, that will also free up a lot of character space and micromanagement. Moving on from the loot, which I do promise to go more into depth as the game comes out, let's move on to missions. Moving on, that brings us on to missions. Now, the 2 missions we got available to us in the beta were very similar to missions you would find in the Division 1. However, I felt they were a tiny bit longer. That may be because I am used to running missions at a level 30 character, and in the beta you are limited to level 7. Of course, it is a new game, and that means brand new missions and brand new story. On top of that, we have brand new revamped AI. Each enemy type in the Division 2 has their own set of AI rules. For instance, the hyenas have very good equipment but are very unorganized and will rush at you with little care for strategy, whilst on the other end of the spectrum, the Black Tusk will utilize strategy to its fullest. And this truly enhances the Division experience. The side missions, however, were vastly improved when compared to the Division 1 side missions. In the Division 1, most of the side missions was just do some meaningless task, like find some echoes. However, in the Division 2, you do things such as secure the Declaration of Independence, which is a super fun mission in itself. Side missions seem to be just a shorter version of a main mission, each with their own story and locations. And of course, it all ties into the brand new settlement feature, which we will go over later on. However, the big thing, the big end game mission we got to play, along with the 3 different specializations that we got to try out, the Sharpshooter, Demolitionist, and the Survivalist, my personal favourite, I like that crossbow, and the Hail Drone, very good. But anyway, this is a main mission that has been taken over by a faction called the Black Tusk. The Black Tusk has enhanced AI as well as some high-tech companions, and by that I mean they have turrets not only on tank treads, but they also have turrets with legs. And as you could imagine, these robot enemies are very tanky and can take you out if you do not focus them down soon. I was a really big fan of the invaded mission. However, with group scaling, I would only advise using 1 or 2 players. Because if you use 3 or 4 in a mission, or at least if it does not get changed by the time launch comes around, the enemy scales up to have a shit ton of health and become extremely bullet spongy. With 1 or 2 players, the time to kill feels perfect and a huge improvement on Division 1. It's going to be interesting to see what loot is on offer by doing these invaded missions in the full release of the game. Next up, we're going to talk a little bit about the open world activities this game has on offer. The open world activities in the Division 2 all revolve around taking control of DC. However, this time you are not fighting alone. The civilians have taken up arms and are actually helping out this time, and will fight alongside you in a constant battle for territory. The civilians will be based at a settlement, which you will upgrade by doing side missions. And the cool part of that is, you get to see the settlement upgrade and progress as you do those side missions, as well as take control of the surrounded area. You will do this by stopping things such as public executions and propaganda broadcasts. However, the main thing is control points. These are defensible areas where either enemies or civilians will take control and defend. If it is a friendly control point, you can go there and donate supplies to give yourself a boost if you have a perk that goes along with that. However, if it is under enemy control, you can fight for control with the help of civilians. Once you clear and kill the boss, you will then have to defend the area from another wave of enemies and another powerful boss. Once you have successfully done this, you then get access to a supply room. Inside the supply room is a whole bunch of loot that I found to drop some of the best loot in the beta. But even after you have regained control of this control point, it does not mean that you are safe after that. Enemies can come and attack, and they will regain control of some control points, and you will then have to go back there and fight to maintain the control of the city. On top of the war between the civilians and the enemies also war between themselves. After all, they're all fighting for control of the whole city. In conclusion, I see this as a huge upgrade from the light zone in Division 1 to the light zone in Division 2, and I am interested to see if they had anything else under the sleeve that they were keeping for release. Moving on, next up is the Dark Zone. So the Dark Zone received some changes. There's now 3 different levels to Rogue. Grey Rogue, which is just Rogue, which means you have not killed a player but are doing some devious actions such as hacking terminals or stealing. However, the incentive for doing so is that you get better loot, and it is also how I managed to get purple gear on my level 7 character. After that you have Disavowed, which is the traditional Rogue. It means you've killed someone, and then if you kill 5 players, you are then manhunt. You are then presented with 3 different manhunt stations. At each station you can choose to either increase your manhunt rank or clear your manhunt rank. If you choose to increase your rank, that station then disappears until there is only 1 left. Then the only option is to clear your rank, of course granting you higher rewards. And in my experience, it felt super good going Rogue and Manhunt, especially with a semi-organized 4-man group. And with the smaller DZs and the smaller player capacity, I felt it much easier to maintain control of the map and hold off as a Rogue. Yet it is not impossible to be overwhelmed. Aside from the Rogue system, which I think has vastly improved, we have the landmark system, which is a returning system from the Division 1. However, this time around it feels landmarks are completely lackluster. The boss does not drop good loot, and the loot you get for clearing the landmark is not good either. However, there is an occasion that happens where a landmark will be a hard landmark, This means after clearing the boss and all the enemies, another wave of enemies and another boss will spawn. After you clear them, you will then get a higher reward for clearing that landmark. However, even then, I found that it's better to just go rogue and get your loot that way. Especially since you can now just go grey rogue and you don't appear on the map. Therefore you don't attract that much attention, unless you run across a 4-man group and get melted, which happened to me a few times, but it's part of the risk, is it? All I can say that my experience in the Dark Zone throughout the beta was great. However, I hope they do increase the rewards you get for landmarks. And of course, I do wish that they let us play the Dark Zone and PvP on our high level endgame characters to see what it is actually going to be like, because that is something that is going to be core to the experience. Last of what we had available to us in the beta is of course PvP. The one conflict mode that we had available to us was skirmish. Skirmish means that your team has a limited amount of lives and has to fight till the last man stands, or until the timer runs out, in which case the team with the most lives win. We also had only one map. That map was Stadium, a map where you want to gain control of the roof, and there is multiple ways onto that roof. There is multiple alleyways which you can go down onto the floor and get up close into the enemies. However, I found that staying on that roof and grouping up with your team guarantees you that victory. You just have to keep an eye out for not only just the stairs, but also the sideways up, which not a lot of people seemed to know about. And of course you gotta keep in mind the other part of this game mode. There is boosts that will every so often be available. These will either give you a firearms boost, giving you a huge increase in damage, or a toughness boost, which will give you a lot of armor. Both of these things are really useful for when you're trapped and the enemy has control of that roof. You can then grab one of these boosts, given that it spawns down on the floor, and make a push as a team, or even in some situations I managed to take a team out as one person. However, don't try go up there if you do not have the boost, and keep in mind that they only last for a very short while. Of course, PvP is also normalized, just like the Dark Zone, which is something I forgot to mention. However, Occupied Dark Zone will fill that void of a power advantage, or at least we hope it does. But anyway, I really enjoyed PvP. Maybe it's because I'm a slightly above average player of PvP. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily a very good player, I'd just say I'm above average. I found that SMGs and shotguns dominate in PvP because you can easily force people to go into close encounters, where of course that weapons are going to dominate. However, it is really handy to keep yourself a rifle or sniper rifle so that you can pick off people whilst holding off that roof, because occasionally the enemy team starts to become kind of smart and decides to stop running into that wall of bullets. In which case, you take a couple of pot shots at them, throw a turret or throw a seeker mine, and there you go, they're pushed out of cover, and you can finish them off with that sniper rifle or rifle. Or if they decide to get ballsy and make a push, you just spray them down with that shotgun or SMG. The experience of PvP in the beta has got me excited to experience everything PvP has to offer in the full game. As for the rewards, it may have been a byproduct of being a level 7 character, but every single conflict cache gave me only greens, which is like the scrub tier loot. Think purples when you're decked out in high end. I hope this is not the case where you would get low tier loot constantly from conflict in the full game, because whilst PvP is technically endgame and it's not about the loot, it's still nice to be rewarded for your efforts. And of course, a little bit of tweaking to the seeker mine will not hurt anybody. And with that, I just want to say thank you for watching this far. I know this video is super long, especially for my standard. So if you have made it this far, then why not subscribe to the channel? I'll be covering the Division 2 a lot, as well as any other game that comes across my radar. But in conclusion, I had a great experience with the beta, if I blank out all the bugs and crashes. But I tend to let that kind of things slide, even after being burned with games like Fallout 76, where where it didn't really change. But in my opinion, the final days of the beta was some of the most fun that I've had in a video game since the release of the first Division. Keep in mind, I really enjoyed the first Division, so I may be a little bit biased. But in conclusion, I would definitely recommend giving this game a go. However, do not get your opinion skewed yet. I am still concerned that this game may still have issues at launch, and I am concerned that they'll take the balancing the wrong way, and I am also concerned that they'll reintroduce classified gear, something that I felt extended the life of the Division 1, however, killed all the fun. However, I'm choosing to go in this one optimistic. But of course, it's your money and you can decide what to do with it. So with that note, I want to say thank you for watching. Leave a comment down below on feedback about this kind of videos. See if you want more of these in the future. I'm interested to know. And of course, as I've already said, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and I'll see you guys in the next one.